Hello, Mohan. So this is my presentation. I'm Patrick, and my presentation is about responsible leadership and the fourth goal, SDG 4, and the subtitle is engaging multi-stakeholder networks to overcome barriers and achieve quality education in the DRC. So I chose this topic, the DRC, because I am myself from the DRC. And this is the agenda. So I will tackle this topic from two perspectives. That's why I put two parts, one left and right side. So part one, the idea is to kind of deep dive and do a quick examination of the SDG imperative and looking at the educational landscape inside the DRC, that is Democratic Republic of Congo, look at some key statistics, some systematic issues like shortage and some dependencies around the structural post-colonial operations in the country. So also look a little bit at demonstrating how quality educational systems will be able to unlock holistically the execution of the greater UN 2030 development agenda that this imperative is part of. So in part two, we then kind of make the bridge and link, um, define the responsible leadership in this great scheme of things from the perspective of an inclusion network of trust building, but also ethical relationship to including quite a number of stakeholders, looking at guided by work for mark and place, but also we look at the Math et al. 2020 on the competency models to be able to formulate a robust, systematic, multi-stakeholder resolution roadmap. Now, SDG 4 is not merely one goal among 17. It is actually the anchor of development. So, what I mean by that is that it is the anchor because it ensures the inclusive, equitable, and quality education as being the single most important multiplier for sustainable society. So, education empowers structural poverty reduction, and that education directly enables local economic productivity. So it promotes gender equality. People would not know what the right would be if they're not well educated to understand what men and women can do equally so. So it provides active public health and quite issues around societies and tensions could be resolved when one is well educated. So most critically, educations would be, if one will have to kind of summarize and directly link it to what the UN is proposing, is education will be the core foundation of institutional progress. Right? It is the bridge, or it serves as the bridge to achieve all of the other UN sustainable development goals or SDG. Now, sorry. Now, the scale of the challenge, of course, in a country like the DRC is staggering. So you have quite a big number. 7.6 million children remain out of school in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So 2 years ago, the president kind of tried to make education free, to push kids to schools, but quite issues around structure, infrastructure, and so on. We know that we have severe literacy and gender disparities that persist. So we have young male literacy at 77% to just 60% for female. As you look at the World Bank's 2023 Country Education Brief, so the national school network is burdened by an outstanding shortage of over, so figures can change, around 183,000 professional educators, as UNICEF reported in 2023. And your funding instabilities, so historically, you have small public resource pools coupled with systematic leakage that will leave the vast rural interior without robust infrastructure. So people studying under a tree. So these are not really statistics, but they represent actually millions of futures that could be potentially lost if they're not taken good care of. Now, this background kind of brings us to the most critical analytical insight of this presentation. So historically, the DRC it was colonized by the Belgium, And one can see that they still kind of operate under structural construct left behind by the colonial system. So the system designed institutions specifically to train passive clerical workers, right? Not people who can think for themselves. So they needed people for colonial administration. They didn't want to build like autonomous critical thinkers that will actually champion national development. So while the colonial power overhauled and modernized its own domestic model decades ago, which means right now, if you go to Belgium, I used to begin to live in the Netherlands next to Belgium, the entire system has actually changed. So things are not really the same, you see. So we're using an education system model that even the colonial power no longer actually uses. So leadership is critical in this, and this is not merely financial or physical resource issue. We have to recognize it's the most important issue, and then deep-seated legacy structure dependency that requires systematic reform. Now, what is responsible leadership? Now we have a quick definition there where we need it requires relational coordination oriented phenomena about building and sustaining ethical sound relationship with all relevant stakeholders. So we want to look at who is concerned in this challenge we have at hand. Now let's look at four. We look at five core competency areas to be able to tackle this. So Math and colleagues kind of propose on collaborative leadership for SGD, identify five competencies. So for analysis, we look at three that are mainly for us. One is systems thinking. This recognizes how historical colonial structures, administrative layers, and all kind of stories, things kind of impact the national education networks. So secondly, it's a stakeholder alignment. This requires authentic of responsible people that need to play a role to ensure that the voices of everyone affected is heard. And the third one would be active change agency to transform passive admin setups into dynamic network of accountability to be able to drive curriculum innovation and so forth. So what are some of the main stakeholders for us in the DRC? So we need the comprehensive stakeholder map, and the political governance includes, you can see around the entire political machine, right? The president of the country, the National Assembly, Senate, the central cabinet, at national, provincial, federal, provincial levels, as well as local municipal directors. So you have educational networks, you have workforce professionals, as well as communities and donors. Now, what is this? We need to work around what we call a strategic engagement metrics, where everyone has a role to play, and for each one of these parts in the group, and uh, the strategy thereof that can be executed. So the president and the cabinet will unify sovereign political will. Without their will, nothing will happen. So national parliament will kind of legiferate, work on laws. Provincial government will execute. Teachers, unions, international donors will have to come to the party as well to be able to get results that one would expect. So this can happen in a four-phase engagement roadmap. I'm trying to rush through time to be able to have this presentation as much as I can. So the first one would be a diagnosis, to applying a systems thinking that we talked about previously. So we map stakeholder interest and conduct regional resource audits. Part two will be convening. So to be able to define roles for everyone. How we identify something like a national education summit and form specialized policies around focusing on infrastructure, curriculum funding, training of teachers, and so on. So the phase three will be commitment. So that will be on trust building. Have a binding national education compact with transparent metrics, how we're going to evaluate the progress as we go along. And then we have all primary stakeholders act of engagement. And phase four will be execution. So apply the change strategy, we deploy the capital, we monitor these indices and enforce transparent reporting to be able to have like a transparent review sessions as well. So these are the specific strategic commitment. So we have like legislative action, administrative coordination, pedagogical overhaul, democratic transparency, community integration, as well as aid alignment harmonization for the role of every single of our stakeholders involved. So what will be the shared value equation? So that will be social and personal dimensions. So will be reclaiming as one of the outcome or output of this, reclaiming human potential. So the DRC youth we have standardized high-grade active pedagogy focusing on critical problem solving instead of what Belgium left. For educators, professional dignity, development opportunity for higher education, realigning the curriculum to the world resources and what is required out there. Systematic and microeconomic dimensions. So that is for it will be fueling the national multiplier. So the state will have capable people that can work there. The corporate sector as well can tap into local talent, and the region, of course, will have the region would benefit in having a stabilized democratic institution and be the scalable role model post colonial period. So, what are the takeaways? Three unifying takeaways to summarize. So, we have that can lay on the foundation of what Nelson Mandela said. Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. So, three unifying takeaways would be first, structural legacy overall finance. Secondly, responsible leadership mandate, achieving SGD4 require careful coordination of relation and trust among multiple actors. And and um, uh, and the last one would be to make sure that education is actually what is used to be able to change the world. Thank you very much. Kind of rushed through this presentation to fit the timeline as required. So those are some of the references I mentioned, and I'm Patrick Mukala from for MBA non owner. Thank you very much.